Hey everybody, how y'all doing? And welcome. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you were thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could be able to tap into my full potential? I mean, live my best form of life, be able to find that purpose or that peace within my own self. Where if that is you, or if you know someone that this conversation is for, you are in the right place. And so what I want you to do before we go any further into this conversation, take some time and share this. I mean, share this with your aunties and uncles, friends and family. Go ahead and share this because this conversation is going to be a very helpful one. And you don't want to miss this. Neither do you want your friends and family. And so I got somebody on that's going to help us with this great conversation. And I believe that they are going to inspire us. They're going to push us, as well as they're going to give unto us some wisdom on how to be able to find those things. So are you ready? I know I am right after this. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Hiram Roche, and I am the host of the Focus on Greatness podcast. And on this platform, we highlight ways where we can be able to help men to be able to find their greatness, the things that they need to be able to find and to get to that place of greatness in their everyday lives. And today, I have someone on that's going to help us to get those tools that is needed to be able to get to there. So what I want you to do before we dive into this conversation, I want you to do me a favor. For those that are watching this live or those that are listening to this probably for the very first time, I want you to do this on any form of podcast platform that you're on. Subscribe. I want you to subscribe. I want you to make sure that you hit that notification bell. I don't care if you're on Google Podcasts, Apple, Anchor, Spotify, or all the hundreds of other platforms that are out there. I want you to make sure that you subscribe. Why do I want you to do that? It's because of this. There are quality conversations that we're having and that I'm able to bring to this platform that will help you in your everyday life. And I don't want you to miss out on these opportunities to be able to have the development and the change in your life. So do me this favor again and make sure that you have subscribed to my podcast. Again, you can look it up for Focus on Greatness on any platform and you can be able to find it. Now, before we get any further, I want to make sure that I push this. Make sure that you are sharing. If you are watching me on Facebook, I want to make sure that you are following. If you're watching me on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe and hit that beautiful notification bell as well. And do me a favor, before we dive in, I promise you this is going to be good. It's going to be so good. It's good enough that you can hit like now. You can hit the thumbs up now. And so for all you that are watching, all of you that are listening, make sure that you do not leave this conversation the way that you came into it, because again, I know that this is going to be great. Now, I have the beautiful privilege of being able to bring this person to the platform and introducing him to you as the beautiful audience that trusts in me. Can you do me a favor? And welcome. I want you to send some hearts, some emojis. If you're driving in your car, I want you to tap on the top of that beautiful steering wheel. If you're walking down the street right now and doing your exercise, don't be the weird person in the gym. Do me a favor, just tap your hands very gently together as we welcome Peter Lynch. How you doing, sir? Welcome.
I'm doing great. Feeling a little bashful after this introduction, I must say.
Well, welcome to the Focus on Greatness. Thank you so much for taking out some time and being a part of this conversation that we'll have tonight. I personally am excited to have you on.
I am too. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Before we go in to any deeper into our conversation, do me a favor, kind of introduce yourself to those that are watching and those that are listening, to the audience, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, there's we'll start off with just, what I do right now is basically I help businesses grow. I help businesses to communicate their message in such a way that grows their audience, grows their clientele, that gets more clients, better clients, a better experience for the clients that continues on and on and on. and creates a positive ripple effect. But and me as a person, and I think why we're here today is because I'm somebody who's gone through the long dark night of the soul and has had to learn a lot during that process of how to persevere and really how to in the midst of darkness find that the light is from hold on to the light of Christ through that to become the person that I am today. Which I'm not here to say I'm perfect by any means, but I know that. But it's a big passion of mine to be able to, share if I can share something that's of inspiration and of help to others that are going through those times of darkness, times of struggle, because it's like, well, I'm somebody that's gone through a lot of depression, being suicidal, mental health is something that's not talked about enough, anxiety, having, just anxiety attacks, panic attacks, feeling uncomfortable in my own skin to the degree that I just, fall apart in any kind of confrontation. And especially, and then how that affect my business life, my professional life. Well, how that affected it was, so if I had any level of confrontation with another male figure, I would collapse, So, I was just somebody who was falling apart basically across all levels and had to just find myself and find a foundation, something to just kind of like hold on to. And through the skin of my teeth, as they say, which I really can't even take credit for me. It really was just, once again, it's a story of God's grace through it all. And that's what I'm excited to dig into. So
I can tell you just from your intro, and this is going to be a great conversation. And I'm excited to be able to have this. Peter, I really want to kind of start and see if we can kind of build this from your intro, like from your starting place, because you have, like you said, you've went through a lot of different things, and the basic for me at the end of it all, some of these struggles and some of these challenges are things that we all have. But like you said, there are certain challenges that we really don't have a lot of conversation about. There's certain challenges that we face surely as men that we don't like to communicate about, period. Because for whatever reason, either we feel like it's gonna make us look weak or feel weak, those type of pieces. So I want to start from the beginning, kind of where you believe that this might have started.
Yeah. The beginning is, a lot of it has to do with, it just goes back to childhood. And I'll tell you, part of this has developed for me kind of an obsession with, figuring myself out. So I've done I'm no therapist by any means. I'm no psychiatrist, but I've done a lot of study into it and mindset work and how to, and a lot of, it all points back to the same place. And I know that that's the story in my own life. It's just like, it's childhood. Look back to childhood, and and it's been a hard thing to come to grips with too sometimes, because it's like, well, don't want to hate on people, what I mean? Don't want to accuse people, and I don't even want to come across like I am. But there is some aspect where it's like, man, I got hurt by a lot of people as a kid. Right. They didn't mean to. I'm not angry at them. I'm not holding bitterness and resentment. But I've had to create some pretty strong boundaries in my life, because, something else that we could probably dig into here later is just one of the things as a father, you have to learn to break the chains of the sin, right? The sins of the fathers are visited upon the generations thereafter. Well, it's our responsibility to break those chains, to take ownership of that sin so that it doesn't continue on into my children, as much as I can be cognizant of that. And that's my path. That's something that I hold myself accountable to, because I grew up with, there was like, basically it's just childhood PTSD, and I've been doing my wife and I both have been doing a lot of study into that recently, and just discovering that the symptoms are all there. And what is that from? And I grew up in the family that was a good family. We were a missionary family. I grew up overseas in the former Soviet Ukraine because we were doing missionary work over there. So I grew up as the missionary kid, the pastor's kid, all that stuff. And we always looked good on the outside. And there was nothing, I'm not accusing my parents of anything like outright crazy, but it was a very different experience on the inside for me, being very suppressed, being very controlled. I was the youngest by 12 years. I had, honestly, I was just beat down by most everybody, and including having, a lot of physical, it was like this. It was physical abuse from my brother, and it was psychological abuse from my father. So as the two main male figures in my life were very difficult for me to have a relationship with. And so So that's, I think that that's the root of a lot of these things. And how's that shape? We both know that like when you have a messed up relationship with your father, you tend to have a messed up relationship with your heavenly father.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of my journey too,
Yeah.
having to understand that I can break those ties without breaking ties with God.
Yeah.
And actually rebuild an authentic relationship with God, with my heavenly father, with my true father.
Yeah.
Through being able to separate myself, from the pain, from the hardship. And again, it's like, look, I can look to their experience and I can understand where a lot of the pain came from for them. It was unresolved. Their unresolved pain became my pain, and what that led to was a difficult life, and it's just, those are broad strokes of childhood. But I mean, if anybody's been in that situation, like for me too, the thing was, I didn't have necessarily like one crazy event, I had a long, just extrapolated, like being kind of submerged, if that makes sense, just emotionally, and in a lot of like, just in most aspects of my being, I was kind of just suppressed. It wasn't okay. Basically, it wasn't okay for me to be me. If I was me, I was going to get in trouble. So I had to learn to very much adapt myself to the situation, which really meant to just, I don't want to stand out. I mean, it's interesting. I'll tell you, even like recently, it sounds funny, but I'm actually happy to have been putting on weight recently, because for a long time I was like way too skinny. And that's one of those energetic, emotional things. Like I've just for most of my life wanted to make myself as small a target as possible, because otherwise I'm getting attention I don't want. I'm getting hard attention I don't want. It was like you couldn't do anything right. There was a lot of, I believe it's one of those things. It's like, well, nobody has a diagnosis because they don't believe in that kind of stuff, because it's it's another topic we can get into, is just kind of like these ideas of, we just pray about your problems and they're going to go away. You don't go see a doctor. You don't go see a professional. You just pray about it. Well, just praying about it didn't seem to fix it. Instead, it was just like, the problems are there, and I became a scapegoat of those problems. Yeah. And so those created, problems from me. And so all that to say, like, I believe there was definitely some psychological issues going on as well, right? Psychological pains, etc. That was unresolved, undiagnosed, untreated. And so that created a situation where it was unsafe, emotionally and physically unsafe. And so that's a little backdrop on the childhood there.
Well, this is the question. Again, it's a lot of different factors. I can tell that in your story that has helped you to become the type of impactful person that you are as of today. And so, but my question is, how are you able to push through all of that pain? Because sometimes we can get in a place and where, yes, we have some form of traumatic scenario or situation that has happened through our lives, and it has the potential to be able to dictate how the rest of our life is going to look. And so, but how are you able to push past that to be able to get to where we're developing and becoming even as today?
Yeah, that's that's a question that I ask myself a lot sometimes too, because it's like, well, what was it? What was that turning point? And for one thing, what I can say is just like, I mean, this was like, I was pretty deeply depressed already. And I was another layer of it was my own denial, because it wasn't okay to be depressed. You know what I mean? Because again, you just pray about it. You believe in Jesus, you shouldn't be depressed. Everybody's supposed to be happy. Of course, happy kind of never shows up. That's kind of interesting. Nobody's smiling, but we're happy because
exactly.
We're saying, I don't get it, but okay. So I'm operating with that kind of mentality. It's not okay to be depressed. I'm pretty massively depressed. I'm 16, 17, 18, driving down the freeway, just thinking about, what if I just let the car drive, just drift off? If I don't actively do it, maybe God will have mercy on me. And that sounds a whole lot better than this life that I'm living. I don't want to live. You know what I mean? So I'm a teenager, and it's everybody's going, what do you want to do? Like, your life is in front of you. And I just feel like, man, I don't want to live another day. So I started picking up alcohol, started picking up, other things. And at some point, though, something just clicked for me, and I'm like, I got to get out. I have to do something different. I have to make a radical change in my life because this isn't going anywhere. I was trying to go to school. I felt like I was going nowhere there, you know, and doing some vocational college classes, etc. And on track for some kind of engineering type stuff. But I was just feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't feel like I have any purpose. I don't feel like I have any meaning. I don't have any joy. You know, I feel empty every day. And I want to get out of my parents' house. I'm 20 years old. I tried once, I'm back and I'm like, well, I'm going to Alaska. I had a connection of a connection. And so I'm just like, all right, that's enough. I'm just going to move to Alaska. So I packed up a suitcase. I had $800 in the bank, I think, when I got there. Wow. And after I bought my one-way plane ticket, I'm just like, I'm going. It's October. And, you know, it's like, I don't care. It's about to snow. Right. I don't care. At that point, I was just like, I just felt like I'd reached this point of there's no going back. I cannot, because at that point, I think subconsciously, not consciously, again, because consciously I was suppressing so many things. And that's why it's like, it's hard to say there's a turning point because, I mean, it's ongoing now that all these realizations, like just today, some realizations about how I've been abdicating my power, you know, and letting aspects of life be what I'm surrendering to instead of to Christ. You know what I mean? So I've been acting like a victim in ways that I wasn't aware of. So it's a constant journey of recognizing that. But at this stage, I was just unconsciously aware of like, I've got to go. You know, if I just get away, I think part of it too, you know, and it was immature thinking, but it still got me out of there, you know, but it was like, if I can just get away from this place and these people, I'll be better. And that's where one of my favorite quotes sank in for me, which is, a place cannot save you, for there is no place where you can escape from yourself. You know, so I get up to Alaska, and what happens is I take a job as a nighttime caregiver to a dying man. Okay. So I'm working all night, staying up because he's on medication. He's got dementia, and every time he goes to the bathroom, they're worried that he's going to get dizzy because the medication makes him dizzy. He's got to pee all night, you know? And so, comical stories happen as I walk into this bedroom, and this man was so stubborn and so determined. He hated being rigged with all these sensors. They like clip this thing with a magnet. You know, if it snaps the magnet, it's going to beep and let me know. Right, but I'd have to be sitting down the hall like this because he would be doing I'd find him. One night I found him buck naked because all his clothes were pinned together to make sure that he couldn't get this thing. And it's like this, this like safety pin that he can't undo. And he somehow got out of all his clothes and is on his way to the bathroom. And I walk in, I'm like, what are you doing? He's, you know, but we had a great relationship, even though I think he hated the situation. Right. But what it meant was I was working all night and I didn't see the sun because I was asleep during the day or trying to, you know, and that's when things caught up with me pretty heavy. And that's when I really came to terms with, I am deeply depressed. Yeah. You know, like I'm in a dark, dark place. Yeah. I'm in a hopeless place. You know, it's like I don't even see the sun. And that's just a physiological thing. It's well documented, you know, seasonal affective depressive disorder, SAD. Right. So it's like every winter, it's already takes a toll on everybody. But then I wasn't seeing the sun at all. And taking care of this dying man. Now, what was a crazy spin on all this too, a crazy loop, was it turns out that this man was the one who was responsible for a publication that my mom read in college that was her conversion experience to Christ. Wow. So I was taking care of the man who was responsible for my mother's spiritual birth into Christ on his deathbed. But I'm still taking care of a man on his deathbed, not seeing the sun. And so it's like, but it's a beautiful example of like Christ is everywhere. Yeah. Grace is everywhere, even in the darkness, you know? And so it's like, and that was my life, you know, was like that Christ, God's grace sustained me through times where I couldn't sustain myself. You know, if it was just up to me, I wouldn't be here because I was at such a place. Yeah. But somehow something else, and, you know, and I'm a very determined personality as well. You give me a challenge and I'm going to bite on, you know, and I don't let go. So, but all that to say, so I get to Alaska, and that was a turning point of just realizing that like, something's got to shift. I want to live with purpose. That's really what happened for me. Is I'm just out there one night in the snow, you know, and it's like classic 2 weeks after I get there, it drops down. It snows And then the next day it drops down to -20 and it stays there for 2 weeks. I'm like, welcome to Alaska. You know, it gets so cold that it pulls all the moisture out of the snow, and then it refreezes on top, and it creates this beautiful crystalline. So there was nothing like it. I'd go out, and I lived near some open property. So I'd go out there in the middle of the night and just walk by myself and contemplate and meditate. And at times, you know, just come to this point where I felt like I was just peering into the void, you know. And so that's where it was like, it really comes to this head where I just feel like I'm peering into the void and I don't have an answer. It's very much like Nietzsche, right? You peer into the void and the void just says no back. It's like, but for me, I didn't hear the no. Like I feel like I came to that place of nihilism, like Nietzsche. Like, my life is meaningless. I am meaningless, but something greater than me answered and said, no, you're not, because I give you meaning, you know. And it was like, that's what I'm going to live for. Yeah. I'm going to live to discover that and live into that potential that I'm not realizing now. Right now, I feel like a failure. And in a lot of ways, to be blunt, I was. You know, I had no future. I had nothing going for me. But my determination to discover that is what made the difference.
And that's the part that I think is important for people to be able to hear, is finding that peace. Surely when you, like you said, surely when you're dealing with a very heavy weight of depression, surely when you are really like submerging the pain, trying to submerge the memory of the pain, you know, all the things that go with why you're hurting, you know, surely when you're going through that process, it's difficult to try to continue to progress when you're struggling with that. But I love that you were able, in the midst of all of that, you were still able to find that purpose. You were still able to push and say, I have to be able to discover and find my own purpose. I do want to ask this question because I know that you have talked to people that have went through the same form of struggles that you have went through, and you were able to speak into them or help them. Because I know I've heard this, like, I'm dealing with this depression, but I don't know how to get through it. I don't know how to break through it. And, you know, and it's a combination of nobody cares for me, and I don't know why I'm here. And, you know, like, what would you say to that type of person that comes to you and says those specific things, and you're trying to help them out of where they are?
Yeah. Well, let's just get right to the title you gave this. All right.
Yeah.
The path to pain is the path to power. Right. I mean, look, it's like it's painful, and nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want a bunch of pain today. Right. You know what I'm saying? If we could all pick our life, nobody's going to say, I want jacked up parents, you know, financial hardship, and no connections or whatever. Right. You know what I mean? Like, just pick your poison, pick your mix. We all have, and it's everybody's got their own story and their own journey that they're walking, their own path, and each path. Like this, and this is what I love, is like it's our calling, our purpose is very much the cross, right? When you go to take up your calling, it's God given. It's like the dream in your heart. You don't just concoct that on your own. That is a part of you, that is created with you, that is given to you from before the foundation of the world. You have a purpose, you have a calling, you have a potential to fulfill. So when we look for fulfillment in our life, we're looking to really fulfill on our own calling and purpose, which is the cross, which is pain, which is a path that leads to Golgotha. There's nothing but pain along that path, but that is the path to power at the same time. So it's when we abdicate, when we run from the pain, we abdicate our power. That's the thing. So it's like in the midst of that depression, in the midst of that darkness, I had to lean into those things. You know, and I can look at the same pattern throughout every step of my life. And if I've ever done it, you know, whatever I give to others, I feel like it's the same thing. Let's bring you to the place of pain. And that's not comfortable. And I'm never going to sugarcoat it. But when you can be present to what is it that's causing you the most pain, what are you most avoiding? What are you most afraid of? You got to be present to that.
Yeah.
With hope, with faith, not with nihilism. Right? Not to succumb to it, but it's our job to turn and face the monster that haunts us. And that monster is the pain in the life, right? And I mean, and I think more accurately, it's just that we're scared to turn around and take up a cross. right? Because that cross might be depression, and nobody's going to choose that. And yes, it feels empty, and yes, it feels like nobody understands you. And you're going to hear things like, "Hey, just snap out of it. What's your problem?" And if you're like I know, if you're depressed, that doesn't help you. It just spirals you down deeper because you feel like nobody even understands me. Something's wrong with me, whatever it is. But it's like, well, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be the person that I am here today. Right. But I had to go through that, and that's the key word, I believe. Right. And because there is no magic pill that makes it go away. Right. We can run from it for the rest of our lives, or we can turn and face it. When you turn and face it, I mean, in psychological terms, it's about the integration of the shadow. Jungian kind of philosophy speaks a lot about that, which is the integration of that aspect of yourself that you're currently rejecting, right? That you're currently judging, actually. And that's been a huge piece for me. It's like, well, what aspects of yourself are you judging? Like, and for me, Myers-Briggs, for example, like I used to think I was the reverse of all the letters except for one. You know what I mean? I used to think I was introverted. I used to think like all these things. And it turns out I'm an ENTJ, and it's like thinking, judging extrovert, right? Who's intuitive. And I'm like, well, I've kept the intuitive. Everything else, I used to think I was sensitive and feeling, and I'm still an empathetic person, but I'm not at all the type of person that I used to think that I should be. And I think that that's a lot of the pain too, comes with this conflict within ourselves of I should be different. And that was a part of my depression, was that I wasn't okay with myself, because I wasn't okay with myself. Like, I mean, look, how can I have a relationship with you, with my wife, with anyone, right? With anyone who I care about? How can I have a relationship with the other person if I cannot have a relationship with myself? So how can I expect them to care about me if I don't care about me in a healthy way, right? Not as a narcissist, right? But to actually care about yourself and to love. I mean, coming back to the cross, the way of love is to do what's best for others. I like Socrates is another great example of this. They condemned him to death, and the official reason was because he was polluting the minds of the youth against the gods of the time, right? But if you look at the gods of the time, they were nothing more than a personification of base carnal passion, right? Hey, we got a god of sex, we got a god of eating, we got it, right? They're all just acting like us. There's no higher standard that's uncomfortable. It's just our standard of what we're comfortable with. Socrates says there's a higher standard. For that, the punishment is death. So it's our job. So love is something that holds us to a higher standard, which is uncomfortable. If you cannot do that for yourself, then you cannot receive God's love. That's because God's love is going to be challenging, right? Love is challenging because love is calling you to that greater version of yourself. And it doesn't mean that the depression disappears or the anxiety disappears. I'm not here to say that I don't have my days where I feel down. I don't have, because I do. And I have my days where anxiety picks up, or I have my days where something triggers me deeply. And I'm like, oh man, I thought I was past this, but the main thing is every time that happens, I lean into it and I do my best to explore that thing to the root and discover what is it about me that I need to learn, because it's no longer about dad, it's no longer about the old boss, because I had some bad ones, you know what I mean? It's no longer about any of those other people. It's like, why am I still carrying this?
Right.
And how can I leave that at the foot of the cross and move on?
See, I love the way, the perspective that you are drawing out, because sometimes, like you did say, sometimes the fear is really having to actually face the problem.
Yes.
But the reality is, just like you stated, the reality of it is that the pain truly is the path to power. So when we're trying to find our purpose, or trying to become this better person, or trying to go through all of these things, the reality is that we are going to go through pain to get to the process.
Right.
That's a part of the process of being powerful, or being strong, or being this person that, that we are dreaming to be. But I also love that you pointed out that presently, not just in past tense, but presently, you do still have moments of where it still hits you. You still have low moments, just like we all do. We all have low moments in our lives and in our days where it might be that life feels like it's overwhelming, or it might feel like just today was not just a good day, whatever those things or the reasonings are. But I love that the way that you look at this is not just that I'm going through a bad time, or I'm in a low situation, but let me examine why I'm here, so that I don't stay here. And so for those that are watching, those that are listening, I want you to be able to see this point, because this is very important. And I would even say this is a part of this power pack, is when we do have those moments, again, we're dealing with this context of depression, and dealing with, just moments of when we are low, or probably at our lowest points, and going through our lowest struggles. The reality is we cannot focus on the people. We cannot focus on the past. We have to focus on right now. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And let me fix this problem within my own self. I can't fix them. I can't change them.
Nope.
I can't, we're not, we can't go back in time and fix what happened to us and go through all that. We those pieces we cannot do. So only thing that we have the strength and the power to do is to deal with what presently where we are, and say, okay, this is what I need to adjust. This is what I need to fix. Maybe I need to fix this part. Maybe and it's a part of the path. It's a part of the journey to get to where we become powerful and strong in those things. I do love this context of even where you're talking about in reference to us carrying our cross. The reality is, the thing about the cross is, the cross was painful, but it was beautiful. It was painful because of what he had to experience, but it's beautiful because of what I get to learn.
Yes.
There's something that I'm learning because of the cross that you carried. And so I don't want to say, in some sense, and I'm gonna let you say something, but I don't want to just be like, oh man, it's just, I'm grateful that you went through what you went through, more so than I'm grateful that you came out of what you went through. And because of that, I can say, man, his cross is beautiful. I'm learning from your experience. I'm learning from you continually walking this path to power. And so I'm grateful for that. I want you to say something, but I also want you to speak in, because I feel like there might be people and you're functioning and flowing in this, but there might be people that are walking in a business sector, which is already stressful and strained, and all of those pieces, and also still dealing with personal.
Yes. Yeah. Well, how can you not, ultimately? Right. Like, I mean, I don't know. Show me somebody who's not, and I'm gonna, we'll decide a number later.
Exactly.
But but for sure, I think that it comes down to this. What sums up what we just talked about, and what applies to this is pain is a gift.
Right.
Pressure is a gift. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to bear a cross.
Yeah.
What gives meaning to life is the pain. Not pain for no purpose, but again, it's the pain of the cross was transformative. The pain of the cross is redemptive, and that's our individual experiences. And sometimes that cross comes in the way of business, right? And because when you step into business, well, you're not just tackling what do you do, right? What are you good at? Most businesses, I mean, we'll just kind of start from the beginning here, right? Most people, my journey, when you start a business, you're like, hey, I can do this thing. I'll just do it on my own, Right. And so that was when I started mine. My daughter was 6 months old. I had one of those bosses who I was just like, I'm not going to keep working with this guy, and I don't want to slave away for this company when I'm not seeing my daughter. And so I'm going to start my own business. Surely I can just do what I'm good at. But of course, there's a whole nother spectrum of business skill is completely different from technical skill of whatever you do in your business. And then you got to work on your business. And most importantly, you got to work on you, because how you show up in the midst of all that is the crux of the success or failure.
Yeah.
Because if you show up and you feel futile, and this is again back to like, it's not just about, look, pain is not inherently redemptive, because you can go through pain and become bitter. You can go through pain and just become angry, resentful, right? And that's the point, is it's also about your state. It's the state in which you engage with life. When you engage with pain with a place of gratitude, that this pain is your gift because it's making you stronger. It's equipping you for things you don't even know exist yet, right? So that you can be a leader. You can be a pillar of your community in ways that you cannot yet conceive of. Because honestly, a lot of times I think if we could conceive of the problems that we'll have to face in the future, we probably might give up. You know what I mean? Like I look at my own marriage and I think of like how hard if I'd known how hard it would be before I got married, I might not have gotten married. But now on this side of it, I couldn't be more grateful for the pain and the challenge and the struggles we've gone through in 8.5 years together, of both of us having to untangle the knots of traumatic childhood and and deep emotional wounding and scars and for me it was like deep repression. I was just so locked up, and for her it was more outward, and so we were a good match, so try to even
kind of balance each other.
I need to do a little more expressing and etc. and also do a little bit more and a lot of it more understanding, but it's been a beautiful process, because as we've gone through that, it's part of it's painful, but our marriage is stronger for it, and we're stronger individuals for it. And I've gained a whole lot of skills in the process and understanding of how this whole, psychology and emotional healing process works, to actually get to things in a different kind of way. So it's about the state. If you're going into it and you feel like the pain is futile, then it is futile. But if you go into it with the hope, and so the thing that applies to business, because every day in business, you got things to do, right? You got a task list of, I need to do the X, Y, and Z to get results, right? So if I show up and I do these things every day, I can expect to have clients. Now, if you work with me, we can probably accelerate that, of course. I've got to drop that in. But you know what I'm saying? Or it might be more or less efficient. We'll just leave it at that. It might be more or less efficient, but either way, if you've got a proven system that you've seen it's a model that works, whether that's for yourself or somebody else, you can trust that that'll work. But if you show up and you work that system and you have the expectation of failure, it's a completely different story. You're setting yourself up for a futile existence. And that's part of the pain to actually explore, is look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? How am I? Because it comes back to pain is also complete responsibility. And that's another thing that shows up in business is about taking ownership of your life and your results. And that applies in business and it applies personally. It's the same thing. When you do that, you find power. When you blame, you've given your power away. And you're saying, I am powerless. I'm a victim. It's the market. It's COVID. Well, COVID's, it's tough. It's a challenge. But if you've got the right eyes, it's an opportunity, because people need more help than ever. So if you're committed to serving people and uplifting others, well, then you've got more opportunity to do that now than ever before. So don't let COVID, because it can be your excuse or it can be your catalyst. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you're good. No, because the thing is, and as you were talking, I thought about a young lady that I've had on the show. Her name is Latasha Sherman. And one of the things that she shares with me, a person that's in some form still deals with my lower moments and, sometimes my depressing moments. But the thing is, what ends up happening is one of the things she shares is that when you have your moment, ask yourself, why am I feeling like this? What has triggered this feeling? Now, we deal with, like you said, we deal with it in our personal, but we also deal with this in your business. So when we're in business and you're doing your business or whatever, and you feel that weight, take the time to pause and say, why am I feeling like this in this moment? What has triggered this moment? Is it the job, or is it the person that just walked in?
Right.
Is it really that my schedule is overwhelming or whatever has now today made me, or is it because of what this person said that triggered a feeling or a reaction or a response that reminds me of a pain from my past? Like, we have to look at all of these, because if we don't, I believe that it affects how we do effective business.
Yes.
And it also affects how we do life with our relationships, how we deal and interact with other people, because there are triggers within us. The reality
Just a few.
is,
Just a few. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few. But there are triggers, and the reality is the triggers come from the places within us that are no longer healed.
Spot on.
It's
Amen.
the places within us that are not healed when they're touched, because they're sensitive. When they're touched in one way or another, they become your trigger. Now you're either depressed, now you're responding through anger, now you're responding through different forms of ways. It's because that trigger has been touched. And that means that specific area has to be healed.
Absolutely. And the word remember, right? Like, remember me, O Lord, in thy kingdom. Remember, the opposite of that word is actually dismember. We think of it as like, oh, I got to remember to do this, right? Like, I got to recall a thought. It's not just that. It's also remembering means to bring something back to whole, back to wholeness. And so when as you said, what triggered this was, as you said, your trigger is a reminder of something of a pain from the past. That's an unresolved loop, right? That's ultimately what trauma is. It's an emotion. Every emotion has a loop. Positive ones are meant to linger and to last and uplift you. Negative ones are meant to actually pass through your body. And so there's actual physiological aspects of this too, where like your organs will start to store emotion. Because there's genetics, but every gene has a receptor of protein, right? So what happens is the brain, in accordance with every thought that we think, is releasing proteins into the body. So your body is completely determined by the type of proteins that the genetics are receiving, because we don't change the genetics, but we can alter their expression. Negatively or positively. So what happens is, if you have repressed emotion, it's going to lead to physiological issues. And I've experienced those. You know what I mean? So it's like when you're doing, it's a detox. You're doing an emotional detox, and that's painful. It's back to this theme. It is pain to say, this came up. I have two options. This person walked in and they triggered me. I can hate them, and I can come up with a story about why I'm right and I'm a victim and they're such a mean person, or I can just look in myself and stand in the fire, because it burns. Right. But that fire is going to burn away the dead wood and allow the new growth to flourish. And that fire is going back to that place and exploring, when was the earliest I can remember, right? Because really what the pattern that happens is, a trigger happens and it's going to release a belief generally, because our beliefs are really what dictate our experience of life. Which is also because beliefs determine action, and action is really what determines outcomes. So if you want to change your life, you change your actions, like moving to Alaska, you know what I mean? And you got to alter your belief systems, because again, it comes back to, if you're doing something with the belief it's futile, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So act as if, because you're not necessarily overnight going to have a new belief that life is hopeful. Maybe you're in a really hopeless state. But you can begin to act as if life is hopeful. Another one is, people don't like me. Well, I used to think that. I walk into a room, what happens? People didn't like me very much because I acted weird. Easy enough to come up with a story and say, yeah, it's all them. People are mean. People are rude. People are judgmental. They're judging this book by the cover and all this kind of garbage that I can come up with to justify. But the ultimate reality is like, well, no, actually, I'm walking in and I'm kind of acting weird. If I stop acting weird and I act like somebody who's likable, what happens? Well, my social life changes dramatically. And that affects business too. You know what I mean? Walk into a networking event and you're like, nobody's really going to be asking for your business card. They're probably just going to be like, bathroom's that way.
Right.
I don't know what you got going on, but bathroom's that way.
Oh man.
But you know, but to be able to go back to that place and recognize, yes, this is me. I own ownership, responsibility, responsibility, right? It's your ability to respond to a situation. So when you take hold of that and recognize, how am I responding? What action am I taking in response to this situation? This person walked in, they trigger something in me. Why? Because they're probably triggering something from childhood, because they remind me of dad, let's say, because that's pretty common. Dad or mom, got a lot of issues, right?
Right.
Well, maybe not everybody like me, but you know, it's pretty common theme, because I mean, again, like the brain is going through nothing but theta state, which means you have no critical thinking capacity until the age of 7. So anything that you're told before then, your subconscious mind absorbs as truth. So your worldview is formed before the age of 7. So people are saying money doesn't grow on trees, rich people are bad. If you succeed in business, you've sold your soul to the devil, kind of stuff. Wow. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, as I'm trying to build my business, I'm like, why am I struggling? Why do I feel like I'm beating my head against a brick wall daily? Well, there was some technical things, there was some strategy things, and I've dug deep on those. But the other aspect was just, well, because I didn't believe I could succeed and be a good person and have a walk with Christ. Yeah. And so it was dissonance of my values, right? So being able to go back there, and then you're really healing your inner child, you know, and that term can kind of be weird to people sometimes. But the inner child is really, it's that part of you that is not healed, as you called out. That's the inner child, because it's still stunted. We all grow physically. You're not stopping that. Right. But emotionally, you get stunted really easily, right? And so for me, it's like, well, I spent most of my life as this, you know, just emotionally immature. And intellectually, I was able to grow. Physically, I was growing, but emotionally, I was stuck. And that stuck was showing up all over the place until, like, you know, as you were just saying, you got to remember, which means relive it and heal it, visit it in a new way, be able to deconstruct those beliefs, right? To be able to challenge it. Because again, it's like we have thought processes going in. Like if you stop and really analyze the day, maybe I'm going to make myself really sound crazy here, but I feel like a white collar schizophrenic. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we don't have schizophrenia. Yeah, right. I mean, just analyze your inner conversation on a day. And a lot of times it's pretty negative. If somebody else was talking to you the way you talk to yourself, you'd probably want to punch them in the face, you know? But when it's in your own head, you're not challenging it. You're an idiot. You're stupid. And you're not just saying, why are you saying that?
Right.
Why? Let me challenge that. What evidence do you have? Well, you did this and this. Well, I also did this, this, and this. Right. You know what I mean? And maybe you don't have that much evidence. But here's the real kicker. If I just want to give something real practical here. When you're struggling with a belief and you're feeling stuck, one of the most powerful questions you can ask, because you want to get to the point where you can realize it's not true. Yeah. I have a belief. I'm stupid. Well, is this true? Sometimes, and you got to listen to your body, not just your mind. Your body's going to have a reaction, and it'll give you that answer. Sometimes the answer is like, yeah. And that's not a little, it's really discouraging, you know, because you're like, I don't want to be stupid anymore. I want to believe I'm confident. You know, one of my favorites, affirmations, I'm confident. It's not, you're lying to yourself. That's why affirmations don't work. You're creating conflict. I mean, think about it. If I come at you and start attacking you and saying things at you, you're going to put your defenses up. And this is a sales thing too. That's why a lot of conventional sales don't work. It's because they're trying to pitch you instead of drawing you in and asking, hey, what are you looking for? Right. Is there an opportunity? Maybe you have a problem I consult. Maybe not. We're just going to have a conversation. That's no pressure. That's a totally different dynamic. When you come in attacking people, you put their defenses up. So same thing with this. You know, we can put you want to be able to explore these beliefs. And so one of the powerful question, because sometimes you're like, is this true? And the answer might be yes. Yeah. The second follow-up question that can really drive a little wedge. Sometimes it's only a 1 degree. Can I be sure beyond all shadow of a doubt that this is true? Yeah. You know? Yeah. And a lot of time, most of the time, you probably can't come up with a yes to that one, because it's like, nah, not really. You know what I mean? Like, as a cosmic reality, you know what I mean? That's where you got to take it. It's like, as a universal truth. Does God believe this too? There's another good one. Does God believe this about me? Does God believe this about money? Does God believe this about business? Does God believe this about relationships? Whatever it is, do I know beyond all shadow of a doubt that this is true? Because really you're challenging your own ego, because your ego thinks it knows everything. And part of the root problem, if we're really honest here.
Yes, sir. No, that is. Peter, this conversation has been helpful for myself, and I know for the audience and the people that are listening, this is helping someone, and that's really why one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to have you on was because I knew that through this conversation we would be able to give some insight and some help on how people can be able to get to this thing called power. And so I want to thank you for not only just coming on, but thank you for allowing this moment to happen, allowing you to open up and share where you are and how you've been able to kind of get through some things. I'm grateful and thankful for that. I do want to do something before we get off. I do want to do something. I ask every person that comes on my interview. I want to make sure that I ask you the same question. So I ask this question to everyone that comes on. I love hearing personally. I love the definitions that I get from this. So the question is, what's greatness to you?
And I love this question. Greatness to me is that not just capacity, but determination to face yourself. Great, because those are great people to me. Those are the great people in my life, are the ones that I can actually respect and look up to, and because I can trust them. Why can I trust them? Is because they're accountable. They're accountable to looking at themselves and to facing their pain, taking up their cross daily and following Christ. That's greatness to me. Anything else, just not interested in. As far as, when it comes to people that want to be like a mentor or anything of that nature, it's like anybody else that claims greatness, it just doesn't stack up to me. There's only one measurement, and that is, do you face yourself and do you follow Christ? Are you accountable? And people watching this might not be Christian, but listen, like, it's about really holding yourself accountable to something that is greater than you. And that means then you've got to measure up, and you've got to be willing to step into that pain of recognizing how you don't measure up right now. And that's greatness.
Yeah. I like that. Again, Peter, thank you for coming on. And for those that are listening, those that are watching, thank you for watching. Make sure you can be able to follow him on all of his social media platforms. And for those that say that this conversation has been helpful for you, I promise you he has a whole lot more. He has some more wisdom, some more guidance to be able to help you. Surely if you are struggling in the areas that we talked about, if you are a business person that is struggling with some things and you want to be able to find and tap in to that power as well, promise you want to be able to connect with Peter. So his information is going to be in the description below. You can be able to find him. Go onto his Instagram, Facebook, go to his website, check him out. He has some very good quality stuff that will be able to help you. I promise you. And again, Peter, thank you so much for taking out your time, cutting out some time in your day to be able to have this. I can tell you on this live, I can be able to tell you that we will have some more conversations in the future, because I believe that there's more people that we can be helping that are dealing with the things that we're talking about, and helping to shine some light in those areas so that they can be able to gain the strength and the power that they need to be able to be the best persons and best people that they're supposed to be.
Good.
So,
well, thank you. It's been an honor. Yes. And just a quick note too. If anybody wants a resource on doing more of that clearing work, just reach out to me. Reach out to me directly. You can also email me at peter@unshakable.pro or any of the other contact info. But Hiram, thank you. It's really been a pleasure. It's my honor. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. No, thank you, sir. Well, everybody, thank y'all for listening and for viewing on today. Remember, we are here every first and third Monday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I love you all, and I'm thankful that God has chose me to be able to have these type of great people to surround myself with. So y'all have a great night, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.